you a home grower looking for a little bit of help? Are you ready to learn as much as you can about your favorite hobby? The Homegrown Helpers brings you informative interviews from experienced growers that have taken the next steps in their journey and decided to help you grow top quality cannabis all in your home. Now welcome in our host, Rob Smith, along with this week's Homegrown Helper.
And welcome to the show, everybody. We are back with the new format of the Homegrown Helpers. I hope you've really been enjoying it. I have, talking with new growers or experienced home growers, I guess, not new, from all over the world, bringing you their years of experience in a condensed format so that you can reduce your learning curve and get to producing high quality cannabis quicker than you were able to before. So here at the Homegrown Helpers, this was our first interview of the new format, so you'll hear a little bit of that. And this interview is with Donnie Waterman. And while we were on the phone, he was finishing up a hemp crop, or working on a hemp crop. It's a long way from finishing up there in New York. Don is big on activism, and I let him go a little long on the activism part because, you know, it's important that we all get involved or stay involved in our local movements to legalize the plant and open up access for everybody. So I let Don go a little bit long on that part. Hope you don't mind that type of stuff. You'll also enjoy the cloning tips that Don brings. Lots of science behind it, lots of experience, and so much more. If you like this format, if you think you have something to share, if you have unique experiences from your particular region of the world, go to thehomegrownhelpers.com/apply. And every Monday, I send out invites to people that I'd like to talk to and think can bring some value to you, the rest of our listeners. So last up, we have our friends, Buxton Hollow Farm. You can visit them at buxtonhollowfarm.com and use the code GCL10, that's short for GROWCAST Listener 10, to save 10% off. They're also giving away 5 complete product packages to our members on April 1st. So Buxton Hollow Farm Natural Products is a small family-owned business. They're based in Rhode Island and are purveyors of the premium quality natural soil amendments, such as compost tea kits, Nourish Coir seed starters, plain or pre-charged biochar, and tailor-made mineral mixes and potting soils. All of their products are one of the following: Clean Green certification, USDA Bio-Preferred certified, and their products are hand-mixed to order. So you know you're getting the freshest, most biologically active products. Again, buxtonhollowfarm.com. Use code GCL10 for 10% off, or become a member at mygrowpass.com and save yourself 20% on all of their fine products. And if you're an organic grower, you already know the benefit of that type of stuff. So without further ado, let's get you over to the interview with my friend Don and let him educate you a little bit about the scene in the tri-state area and a little bit about cloning. So let's get on with the episode. And welcome to the new format, guys. This is Rob with the Homegrown Helpers, and I am here with Donnie Waterman. Don, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to be here, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Awesome. So, Don, I hear some snipping going on in the background. What are you doing there?
Right now, I'm trimming on some Suver haze, some industrial hemp grown out here in the Endless Mountains region.
And you're just defanning from what you told me before we started recording?
Yeah. I'll go through, and most people will do this with their hands that I've observed, but I'll just go through with my scissors fast and get the major fans, and then I'll shuck one way and shuck the other, stem in a bucket, bud another.
Right on. Sounds like you got that process down. That's how I used to roll was, you know, for a small amount, pulling fan leaves off is fine, but you know, I always found scissors was way quicker and just go right up one side of the plant and then take the buds going off the other way.
Oh, yeah. As soon as you get a couple cuts in and you get comfortable with the fiskers, you can't compete.
Totally.
Maybe they could. I don't know. I've not seen it be applicable.
No, the only thing that I've seen was a video of some Jamaicans
that were pulling fan leaves from outdoor leaves, from outdoor
Yeah.
plants. And man, like they were going wild. Like I don't even know how they did it, but they got that twist and the finger pull all at the same time. They were on point.
Yeah, this has been hung for a while. You know, our season here ends pretty much late October, and we had some standing plants that were out there, and we're taking a look at it, and we're like, yeah, we'll pull those in. So, I mean, we had a barn full, and we're getting through processing that, and we ended up hanging it full again.
Wow.
Just out of what was standing in November still.
Right on.
Yeah, it was gnarly.
So, Don, why don't you tell us where here is? Tell us where you're from and a little bit about yourself to kick things off here.
So here is Endless Mountains region. It's what's referred to as the southern tier of New York, which is, if you're from the city, you would call it upstate either way.
Well, anything outside of the city is considered upstate New York, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You could say that. And then I live and work down in the Pennsylvania portion of that region. Ski country, hunting area, little lake retreat for Jerseyites and the like, you know? So it's, we're around like the 41st or 40, probably like the 42nd parallel and up high.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you've been growing cannabis for quite a while, and obviously you're working on a hemp farm. Tell us a little bit about your background with cannabis.
So when I was a young kid and just being around in a small town like this, I got exposed to cannabis, and I was really interested and just had the time and the people skills to get involved with it when I was really young. I think, you know, I hope my mom's not listening, but when I got fronted my first wrapper, I think I was like 11, you know?
Wow.
So it was an early introduction. And soon after that, my Uncle Jonathan had these little stubs in an egg carton in the window. And, you know, what are those? And they were just bag seeds. And he taught me how to germinate seeds and how to kind of use your lights in your house to stop them from stretching so much. And so early, probably like 14 or 15, I started popping seeds and killed a lot of plants out in the muck because I used to plant in wherever I could, and the waters shift here throughout the season. And so a good spot might be great for a month or two, but you might lose your whole shit if you leave it there for another month. And I wasn't really aware of that as a young kid. I came from the South. So I grew up in the South and came up here where I had worked tobacco and kind of seen agriculture in that way. But after a few failing crops, we started to pull a few off, and just being in close proximity to the plant was so much different than close proximity to what was then the traditional market here. And that avenue just was like leading me closer and closer to wanting to be a part of the production and the healing of being involved with cannabis, not the money. East Coast for a long time, and kind of still is, like, not the holistic movement it was in the West. And that was, even after having gone out West and studied and coming back home, that was another reality check later on to have to deal with it. It's still kind of a game out here until you sift out and find the real medical patients that you want to help.
Yeah, I've never really spent much time on the West Coast, but from what I understand, we're much more fast-paced and uptight than the typical West Coast type of, laid back, easygoing type of personality. But it also goes hand in hand with, we're much more focused on material things and the money aspect of most things.
Well, I think the East Coast, and not to interject, but just even saying it in that, it's like, out here, it's maybe 1 in 20 families has surplus income, and I would have to say in the Midwest and all the way on the West Coast, it's not a different picture, but our problems are so old here. We didn't come into progressive new law. We didn't come into an agricultural boom where, hey, there's farmland that's fertile.
Right.
No, we didn't come into that.
Right.
So it's like the West Coast is a whole secondary movement of the population of the United States to begin with.
Right. Yep.
And I think that came with a lot of relief.
Right. So, Don, can you update us, on the current state of legalization of cannabis in New York State?
So I'm actually from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But I do know a little bit about New York, too. Governor Cuomo just issued the annual State of the State address. And he's, front paging it again, pushing it forward. And regionally, the 5 governors, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and I'm missing one, and you're going to have to forgive me on that. They held the first ever vaping and cannabis summit in the city or somewhere local to there, and they came to an agreement about how to legalize cannabis in a fair and equitable way in the Northeast region. And the last I knew, they were looking at the Interstate Compact, the Triborough Bridge, the Interstate Compact there, how they could operate it in a way like that. But that was a while ago. And then now you're seeing the individualization of the inaction of these things. But what they said is that they want to do it in a way that's common enough that having these adjacent jurisdictions isn't going to cause a fucking problem, because that's what you see. You see Colorado and Kansas. You used to have a huge amount of diversion attempting to leave the state of Colorado through Kansas and come back east, and it was just a death trap.
Well, I think that's a really good move on those governors' parts, to all get together and kind of agree on a way to bring legalization across the Northeast. And I mean, man, if that were to happen, it's huge. That's pretty much the entire Northeast corridor that's going to be have legal cannabis, and
I think we'll be the biggest block of conglomerate space that cannabis is just legal in, if that were to pop. And the thing is, so I call around in Pennsylvania. Normally, that's my Monday morning thing. I'll call 20 or 30 of these Republican senators who haven't come out in support of it. We have a specific measure, SB 350 in Pennsylvania. Senator Dalen Leach and Sharif Street. I know Sharif Street's out of Philadelphia. Dalen Leach, I'm not sure what his representation is, but if you read into SB 350, it's pretty much like if you want to cultivate cannabis in the U.S., you might as well move to Pennsylvania, because it's amazing. I mean, you can get in and contribute to the open market for $150 or some really close proximity figure to that to do a micro home grow, which allows you 150 plants. And as long as you're passing your testing and stuff, you can sell those to anyone who will buy them.
Wow.
Under this new format.
Wow.
Yeah, it's seriously based on social equity. And another thing about the New York, their efforts to legalize, if you read into that, most of what you'll see is that they failed to come to an agreement on where the tax revenue was going to go. And it wasn't based at all in social equity. And pretty much the entire basis for issuing SB 350 is social equity. And it has a grant program in it that's set up to funnel money collected from taxes back into business grant for hard-hit neighborhoods from the drug war. And in Pennsylvania, that's terrible. Philadelphia, in the 70s, they burnt neighborhoods in Philadelphia on accident, on purpose. Who cares? It happened, so there was some serious displacement that happened, and displacement of culture, displacement of people. And just to even hear Pennsylvanians talking about that is a big win for us.
Now, how does Pennsylvania feel about home grow? Because I know New York's initial stance when they were getting ready to legalize cannabis the first time was that home grow was not included in that bill.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that where they ended up lacking the support.
Okay.
But in Pennsylvania right now, SB 350 would allow for 10 plants for home grow. You have to register your home grow though, and there's also some strange stipulations on that where you're open to inspection or whatever. But in a recent challenge of those and a questioning of why that was done, Senator Dalen Leach said, the Republicans don't want to give you an inch on this, and they damn sure don't want to give you home grow. These inspections wouldn't be a regular thing or a mandatory thing, and if they did happen, it's going to be because it's reported that you're diverting from your home grow
right
into the black market or something. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, compliance is fine, but it gives them the right to investigate your premises should something arise. But it's not going to be police. It would be the Department of Agriculture, or at least that's what's reported.
Well, right. With a sheriff escort or something if they've got a diversion report.
Exactly. They're never going to be able to enter your home without a law enforcement official present. But register and do your 10 plants, and I can't say that that's not the only answer we're going to get if we get that one. There's also a state-run measure on the board that was introduced by, I believe, Representative DeLoso, and I can't even give you the number on that one. It's there's someone else who does that. They use the state-established liquor system for distribution, and that's what they're looking at, and they're going to treat its cultivation and regulation like tobacco. So it would be using already established Pennsylvania authorities to now rule and regulate the cannabis market. The support for that, I don't know. As far as which one will come off and when, nobody can say. But I fully believe SB 350 will come through because this guy, Senator Dalen Leach, drafted our medical bill.
Okay.
And he's the one who got our medical program started in Pennsylvania.
Well, awesome. I really appreciate that rundown, AJ. We're going to get into the grow advice here very shortly, but I did want to let the audience know that, this question is very important because we all have to be, activists in our own right. And AJ definitely sounds like he is doing his part to help his home state, Pennsylvania, cross that bridge and get on the right side of legalization. But I would just, urge everybody to take those steps and represent and fight for everybody's ability to grow their own cannabis because, diversion won't be an issue if we all have so much cannabis that, I don't need to give it to my friends and I don't have anybody to sell it to because they're all growing. So, I'm just going to give my cannabis away to people that need it. And
that's where we're at too. A part of this whole thing is that we're like, I'll even put it out there now. I have a plant merchant license under Mother Tree Nursery, and when rec pops or medical grow pops or whatever, and you can buy and facilitate clones, it'll take a while to get operational, but any medical patient will be able to come to us and we will give you a cut,
Awesome.
Like give you a legit, whatever you want to call it, 4 or 5-star kind of strain. It's not going to be something that's like brand new and got all this noise on it. But, from my experience with cannabis, tried and true cultivars are going to be 90% of your palate potential anyway. You're going to have some fun candies out there or whatever, but yeah.
Cool.
Anybody will be able to come one time. Mother Tree Nursery.
Mother Tree Nursery. I like that.
Yep.
So Don, why don't you bring us into your grow room and tell us about your current grow setup and, the size of the tent or the room, how many plants, the soil medium, that type of thing.
So I don't do like a tent or anything like that, but I do a masked area with Panda film because it's just an isolator. And so I'll typically find an area where I can just build a mask room, almost like a painter's room, and from my history in heating, ventilation, and just overall contracting, I have no problem in throwing up any kind of thing like that real fast. Even if you wanted to go with you can't do a huge CFM, like cubic feet per minute fan, but you could do an inline run and not suck in the walls on a Panda film setup. But right now I'm in that, and I run 2 315 LECs. I really like the way that they're low input wattage, but they have the ability to just kind of render what it is I want to see on my plants. And I'm in 50% native soil, which is like bark. And if anyone's from, or, you're from the Northeast, it's almost like an algae, but like an algaeic moss. Then it grows really low into the ground, and it doesn't raise up high at all, but you'll find it on trunks and stuff. I really like to mix that in for some aeration, and that'll actually survive in there if you don't nuke your soil with, shitty nutrients. So we went through lighting, walls, soil, and I feed, I feed a lot of different stuff. I've made FPJs, and I'll harvest wild dungs because we live out in the middle of nowhere, and you'll be able to find some dung with berries or castings in it in the late fall. But right now you're just going to find grain specimens and stuff. And we have donkeys, so I mix that into the compost, and we're close to organic. If I see a problem, I coming from commercial cannabis, by no means am I just going to let that ride and not address it with whatever I need to do to fix it. Because we cultivate with a purpose, and I don't want to just see something go south and just let it go because of my morals at this point. We don't have the luxury. So yeah, I'm native soil guy. I use a little bit of Pro BX. The vermiculite is light in that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's inoculated with the mycorrhizae already. And yeah, I like to keep everything really wet. I was talking to a guy just before this run, and I would water and feed and water, and then I would let everything dry out, kind of, because in veg, I always noticed that when I did that, everything just started reaching, and it made me have this off confidence that letting things dry out was a really great thing. But I notice now I keep a constant wet pot, and I would love to do that with blue mats or whatever in a soil bed. That'll be my next upgrade. But I just go in and I look, and if I'm drying out, I'll just go in and roll in and add some water. Or if I have a tea brewing, I'll take a little quarter cup of that and add that in, and then I'll water that in over that. I'm very untraditional. I look at my plant and I'm like, oh, well, what do you want today? Because I've been growing for so long, and there's all these standards and ideas of what we need to do and when we need to do it. And I hope that we all get more intuitive than that. And most of us, I think that do it successfully are already.
So, we're going to go off script here a little bit. You seem very in tune and, intuitive with your growing style. What advice do you have for, the new home growers out there to kind of cultivate that intuition in themselves? Is there something that they can look for on every day on the plants? Is there a routine that you could suggest that might bring out more intuition in these new home growers?
Yeah. Probably a few things. And I think one of them would be don't isolate cannabis from the rest of your knowledge about anything, whether that be plants or or air or whatever. This isn't this isn't creating a brand new atmosphere for an alien thing to exist. You're just trying to make a hospitable atmosphere for something that already works to drive itself. So when people are asking me about that, I think the most common metaphor I go back to is like, you don't need to invent the wheel. You're not a spoke in the wheel. You just need to learn how to drive. And that's all. All you got to do is find a system that you understand the concept of before you put it into action. Like, so if you go into your grow store and your grow dude's like, hey, look at this. This is buffered cocoa, and I love cocoa. Fuck that guy. Because, like, if you want to be simple and you want to go in and you just want to grow a plant, grab an organic premixed soil. There's tons of them out there, and I'm not even going to say one out loud because that's just, I don't get any sponsorships, and I make my own. I walk out into the forest, and where you can jump up and down and feel it kind of bounce underneath you, loamy, get that. You don't need Promix. You don't need vermiculite. You can use whatever. Use that native soil and stones. And if it's dark, don't feed until you see your plants lighten up and have that hunger in them. But as far as like, beyond that advice, it's just, while you're doing your first grow, keep your head out of the bud porn. And if you know somebody, don't feel like their truth is law. I came up under a master grower that came up under a master grower. And funny thing is, I just got the chance to see him. I just got the chance to welcome him back to the East Coast the other day. And it was such an honor to have him see my work and be like, I'm so proud of you. We never grew together, but it's a plant, and it likes to be alive. It wants to be alive, and it wants to help you out. So looking for stuff like leaf angles are big when you're in daylight time. If your leaf angles are down, most likely that plant's unhappy in some way. But don't go in there and hit it with 6 different treatments to make it happy. Go in there and investigate why your leaf angles are down. Is it dry? Did your roots hit the bottom of the pot? Is your daylight too intense? Is your humidity just like, is it Sacramento in fucking August when there's 0% humidity in your grow room? Or is it the bog? There's all sorts of shit that could go wrong, but there's one thing that can go right, and that's just simplicity. For me, that's taping off a room and putting in a lighter and using some organic bag soil even. And you never, don't pH that shit. Use tap water. Especially if you come out of a well, and if you're coming out of any kind of city or any kind of stone area, like I come from the Bluestone Mountains, and there's so much rock phosphate just drifting around that, you don't need to ever add certain things. Like, I'll never use CalMag. If I did, I would see like stupid amounts of concentration come up and clog up my leaf stomata because it's just in there, but you have to develop that intuition yourself.
Okay.
For me, easy grow number 1, get a light, some Panda film, tape it off, and use organic soil and try to use your water. It's easy.
Cool.
And you can listen more to your plants that way than to your schedule.
Cool. So we are going to take a quick break and let you know about the partners, the mygrowpass.com partners for this episode, the friends of the show that make it possible, bring you discounts, bring our members discounts and giveaways. When we get back, we're going to tell you exactly how you can get on this new format of the Homegrown Helpers. And we ask each one of our applicants for one topic that they would like to really dig deep into. And Don's was cloning. So we're going to ask him all about that right after this short break. This fine episode with Don is brought to you by our friends Fish Head Farms and their fine product, Fish It. So you can find them at fishheadfarms.com and use code GROWCAST to save yourself 10% off. What does fish shit do for your plants? It promotes heavy, sustainable growth in veg, throughout flower, all the way through. It also works excellent as a transplant aid to reduce shock. It's also a great flushing agent to get all of those built up salts and nutrients out of your soil. It pretty much activates everything in there. The beneficial microbes aid in bud development, overall yield, terpene production, aroma, and taste. What more could you want in one product other than fish shit that provides you all of that? Bring life back to your media with fish shit. Use code GROWCAST to save yourself 10% off. Fishheadfarms.com. The full spectrum microbial product and ecosystem in a bottle.
And welcome back, guys. Really hope you're enjoying this interview with Don. We got into the legalization a little bit, and now we are going to get into Don's choice topic, and that is cloning. And I believe he wrote down mother plant care and maintenance, I believe. But Don, why don't you dig deep into your topic of choice, and that was cloning.
Yeah, I see a lot of people struggle with what we were just talking about before the break, their first grow, and whenever anyone goes, hey, I got a plant, and they go, what should I do with it? My first answer is going to be clone it, because at that point, you're no longer putting all your eggs in one basket. And just by doing that, the natural tendency for your plant is going to be to balance its own physiology. So while you're coming up top, your original topping of a plant, that's easily your first clone of a seedling. And now you have two plants. All right. Now your first one grows two tops and your new clone grows one. Chop that. Now you got 5 or 6 plants, and then so on and so forth. And it gets out of hand, but at that point, you don't even need to have a mother practice. And that I was taught that industrially by a super, super, super talented prop guy. His name's Raph, and he is an amazing, amazing propagative cultivator. And I think that no matter what, it just brings you to a point of like, okay, I can make this mistake, or I can try this. Maybe not on your main project, but if you have ideas, you can try it on, number 3 in the little 4x4 pot. And it opens up your ability to have an understanding of what you're doing and not make every single sacrifice for this one plant or this one project. And it does solidify you where you're like, yeah, you're going to be doing this. But you got to ask yourself the question of, is that what you want to do to begin with or not? So if you just want to run a seed. But for me, anytime you have anything valuable in your hand, you should probably clone it, and then you should clone it 10 more times and give that away to 10 people. Because when you get fucked up, maybe one of those 10 is going to have it. And that's how you keep genetics in your library sometimes, because you can't hold 20, 30 plants, So that's my spiel on cloning and the importance of it to the home grower. Also, the upkeep and care of several small vegetative plants while they're coming out of the transition of, fuck, I just got my head cut off and rooted. That's very difficult for a new person to dial in, where they need to get kind of just teeter fed, just a little enough to keep them going. And that's very difficult to learn how to master. And you're going to see where your difference is, like, oh, I watered this one a little more when I actually had the food in the pot, and this one took off, and then this one got the ass end of the pot I never shook, and this one died because it got burnt to death. So it's just purely for education. I think cloning is key, unless you just want to pop 100,000 seeds, which then go ahead, or 100, whatever.
Okay. So I have a pretty decent guide written up on my Atlas Plant Trainer site, atlasplanttrainer.com site about cloning. But did you have any practical tips to make, something that you might do to make every cloning run a success?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Even industrially, when I was trained, the practice was still, so you go in and you're gonna use a razor and cut a bunch of tops off your veg plants or your mothers, and you're gonna you're gonna throw those in a solo cup and then run back to your prop room and then dunk them and put them in your rooting cubes, right? You know, I would say in a small situation, anytime you can, cut it, put it right in the enzyme, put it right in the cube. I never bother with putting it in water, because that water is pretty much a microbial solution at that point. It's a wounded specimen. And now you want to soak it in all this shit other than the rooting enzyme. So that's no number one. Don't put it in water. Just cut it, stick it in the gel into the thing. Don't bother with, unless you want to cut a long stem cut and then take it higher where it hasn't been exposed to that. It's fucking up the vascular system of the plant. You know, the xylem and phloem contain an exact contingency of not only plant nutrients and, you know, other shit. It has this specific balance of pressure where the consistency and the viscosity in this vein and in that vein play a part in plant health. So you want to keep that all intact. And to me, cutting them, sticking them in the hormone and into the block is the only way to make sure you're not introducing some other shit or changing the physiology of that specific specimen. And then I would say the number two thing is, like, I was taught even to mist my clones and shit or whatever. I personally have put out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clones that never got misted. They were done in a tote, though. If you can isolate the air, like I did, you know what I'm saying, like a big black tote, you can hook up a single fluorescent in there. And if you just, I've done it with nothing but dirt and aloe and watered in that dirt and let it sit for a while, and then poked it a hole with a toothpick and then stuck my plants and my cutting in aloe, and down in the dirt it goes. And probably like 20 days later, you got growing plants, and maybe a few of them are dead. That's a super easy way to do it, as long as you can isolate the airspace. But if you're using like a dome, you are going to have to hydrate. But huge fucking key to never losing another specimen. Never spray your cuttings or your clones. Spray your dome, which that's getting very popular now too. But the difference that made for my success rate from the time I instituted that to now is incredible. I've cut hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hemp clones and OG clones and whatever clones, and like, yeah,
cool.
That's key. Don't spray your specimen. Spray your environment.
Awesome. So, you know, in this intake form, you had a very interesting best piece of advice you've ever been given about growing cannabis. Do you remember what that was?
It's I'm sure it's something that my master likely related to me. Man, that's a good question, and that's a hell of a call out.
Okay. All right. I'll read it to you.
Yeah, you're going to have to give it back to me.
All right, because I think this is going to be the last question before we get going here. So I'm hoping you can dig into this a little bit. So it says, you can go out and study and read books and watch YouTube and blah, blah, but being in the bush, you can focus on now, on the relevance of the manifestation of your influence on this plant. Do you remember who you put that down?
Yeah, that's Luke Metzer.
Okay. Let's unpack that a little bit. Dig into that a little bit.
So I'm 25 years old back in the day, and I come into a greenhouse that's in the earth, plants, you know, fucking 15 foot tall, some of them. Some of them are 10 foot around with a stalk that it was just incredible. You know, and it was amazing to see that. I had been involved in cannabis most of my adult life, and I'd never been in legal land. So I go and I get a job there, and that becomes my life. And one of my oldest best friends, Luke Metzer, ends up as my tutor, you know, my master. And I would ask him questions every night, you know, like we actually lived together at the time. So it never ended for him. That never, ever ended for him. it's, oh, what about this and what about that? pH, and what about the height of the light, and what about those sulfur burners? And there are 20 million aspects to how you can actually influence a plant beyond yourself.
Right.
And you can look them up and read about them. You could study the SOPs, whatever you want to do. But until you're out there and you watch the plants and how they are interacting with you, and how the cuts that you made an hour ago are how that plant's responding to it, that's learning. That's learning your space, your plants, what's going to make you successful. When you're out there researching and watching the biggest buds being grown and this and that, like, you're just throwing money at a problem. It's the old High Times thing. Like, oh yeah, look at that brand new lighter they got. Look at this brand new this they got. That's never going to help you, man. If you can't learn how to operate the simplest echelon of a grow, then how are you going to operate one that's 10 times more complicated? And the exercise I was talking about, I think before, kind of the simplest method of application of this is like when we would walk up to plants all the time, and the question is, what 2 leaves are going to help this plant if they're not there? And some days there's more than 2 you could take, but you want to take 2, and you want to take the exact pair of it's exact opposite on the plant, because I hella believe in balance. These things try to grow in balance all the time, so going in and plucking them apart and not giving them balance really pisses them off. So, some days you want to unblock something, but, knowing when to not take anything anymore and when the plant doesn't need you anymore, but your influence is still there. It's just, how was that manifested? Was it manifested and it's all burned up and fucked up? Or did you take your time and study what you were doing to your plants the whole time, and now they're so happy to be there? That's the difference between someone who eventually articulates their craft into something that someone can look at and be like, yeah, he's a master craftsman, and someone who just wants to race to the finish line. Like Frenchie says about making hash, like, you just want to shake, or you want to get these dimensions of perfection. Do you want to sit and study and understand how to achieve your best thing? Or do you want to sit and envy their best thing?
Right.
So that's like a whole echelon.
I think that's
of life.
I think that's also summed up, with the old adage, like, there's no better teacher than action. You have to do the thing that you're trying to learn in order to really actually learn it, instead of just sitting there reading a textbook or watching your YouTube videos, like your buddy so eloquently put it.
Exactly. I mean, you're not going to go in and get a doctorate without performing clinicals.
Right. So, Don, we are coming right up against our time together, and I really appreciate you joining me today.
Oh, thank you.
I do have 2 more questions for you. Besides you and the cannabis plant, what's one item that must remain in your garden in order for you to be successful?
A fan.
A fan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super key.
Okay. Can you give us a quick 30 to 60 seconds on why that's critical for you?
No matter where you're growing, if you're under a sophisticated light, you're going to get hot and you're going to get heavy. And fans just help move the life around, help your airflow.
Cool. And where can our audience, see some of your work or connect with you if they'd like to?
So at DIZOFJUANATHON. So that's at Dizon of Wanathon. And that's the old gamer tag. It's a fucking mouthful. But yeah, that's my Instagram. And we are currently in the process of building up Mother Tree. And we're going to be flushing out that farm to get ready for whatever's coming next, really. But I'm there on Instagram under that handle. And then on Cannabis, I think if you look for Spirit Bomb, you will see me, and you'll be able to actually see some of my stuff that I've been working on lately. I make a lot of extracts and just try and give it back to the community where it came from.
Cool. Well, audience, and if you want to find Don, I'll link those up in the show notes or on the Instagram post. We'll definitely tag him in that, and you can track him down via those means.
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
All right, Don, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. I'm sure our audience loved our conversation and learned a lot today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, bro.
All right, take care. Happy growing, guys, and we'll see you around.